Hi everyone, in this video I'm just going to do a little quick tutorial to show you how to join your granny squares another way. I have done one tutorial already which shows you how to join my vintage granny square, and that creates a ridge effect on the top of your project, and that's creating single crochets on the top. That's crocheting it together. But this time I'm going to show you how to create this effect, which is actually done through sewing. And what this does, traditional granny square, you can find this tutorial on my channel as well. I'll put a link in the description so you can see how to make this actual square. But this one here, you can see, is created a nice smooth finish, so there's no ridges, but it allows you to still see the definition of the square like this. And this is just done by sewing it together on the back, going through just some certain loops. So I'm going to show you how to do this. Okay, so just refocus my camera so you can see a little bit closer up. And what I need to do is I need to join these granny squares. I'm actually making them into a bag at the moment. Eventually that'll be a tutorial on my blog, but it means I have to join these together. So what I'm going to do is actually going to join these sides, and we're going to take the right side. So this is the right side, that's the wrong side. Take the right sides like that. I'm going to put them together. Okay, so we've got the right sides together. Okay, so you're basically looking at the backs, the two backs. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew on the back. And to get the right length of yarn, what I normally do is I'm just going to be sewing together one edge. So I'm going to measure roughly one length of my edge and then double it up. So you end up with sort of just over double the length. I've lost my scissors. There we go. I'm going to cut myself a little bit of yarn. I'm going to get my yarn needle and just thread on my yarn. Bring back my project. Now with this granny square I've actually got 2 chains on each corner like so, and I know that I've got, if I turn it back the other way, I know that I've got 20 stitches along each edge. Okay, so I know that 20 stitches is going to match up with 20 stitches this side. Okay, so it's important to work out how many stitches you have on the side first. Okay, so we're going to put our right sides together. Okay, right sides together, and I'm going to find my first stitch I'm going to work into, and I know my first stitch is going to be one of these 2 on the corner, and that one there is going to be for this length, and then this one, the second one here, this one is going to be the first one for this side. Okay, so I'm going to put my needle through this stitch. Now normally when we work for a stitch we go under 2 bits of yarn. Okay, so let's find our stitch to begin with. So there's our little stitch there, the first one we're going to work into, just the second one of that chain. Normally we go under 2 bits of yarn, don't we? But what we're actually going to do when sewing these together is we're just going to go under the front loop for this front square. So this front square that's facing us, we're just going under the front loop only. Then I'm going to find the corresponding stitch this side, so it's going to be this chain here. But this time, instead of going through the front loop, instead of going through that front loop, we're actually going to go through the back loop. Okay, so it's the front loop for the front square and the back loop for the back square. That's an easy way of remembering it. Now I'm going to just bring that through. I'm going to leave a little bit of a tail just for sewing at the end, and I'm going to reinforce that by going through it again. So front loop and back loop, just to secure that into place. I'm going to do that all the way across, going into the front loop of this square, then the back loop of this square. I'm just going to refocus my camera to see if I can get that a little bit better in focus. There we go, it's nice and close now. Okay, so show you that again. So for this front square, we're going under this front loop, then find your back stitch, we're going under the back loop. Okay, and the one thing to make sure you're you're sewing into the right bit, the right part of the stitch, is the stitch on the front piece is like a little V shape. Okay, Normally we go under 2 bits of yarn. Okay, it's a little V shape, and the V shape is pointing left. Okay, it's pointing left. So we know that that's going to be our front loop there. Then the back loop, you'll notice the stitch that we normally work into, if I put it through both loops to begin, like so, you'll notice the little V is facing right, so the opposite direction. So I know that I need to skip that front loop there and go into that back loop there. Okay, whoops, knock the camera, do very close-up work. Okay, and we're going to do that all the way across, and the same with these little chains as well. See, the V shape is, there's the V shape, and it's pointing left, so I know that's my front loop. Then the V shape that's pointing right, and I know that's my back loop. So I'm going to sew this all the way across to the other end, and then I'll show you what happens when you want to get to things like corners and closing gaps. Okay. So front loop for the front square, back loop for the back square. It's important when you're working through these to make sure you don't catch any of that back loop and don't catch any of that front loop, because you want that to be visible on the front, nice and clear. Okay. You can see, if I open this up, you can see by keeping those loops free, it keeps the shape of the square at the front. So I'm going to do that all the way across, and then come back and show you what to do when getting into a corner. Okay, so I'm just coming up to the last stitch, and I know I'm ending, there's my little 2 chains on the corner, so I know that chain is going to belong to that edge, and this chain is going to belong to this edge. This is my last stitch to sew together, and same for this one. Loop, and there we go. So that's finished that edge, and I should have sewn through 20 stitches. So I'm just going to open that up, and then you can see it's created this nice ridge effect here. So I'm now going to join another square, and then when I'm joining my last square, so we get 4, I'm going to show you what to just do when you get to the corner, just close up any holes. Okay, so I'm just going to join another square, and then I'll come back. Okay, so I'm just about to join this square, but I'm also going to join this square this time. So I'm actually going to be sewing across 2 lots of squares. So to get my yarn length, I'm going to measure just over, about a good couple of inches either side, and then double that up again, and then that should, and plus a little bit more, and that should be enough for sewing. I'm going to do the same thing again for this square. Again, I'm going to make sure we need to put our right side, so I'm going to turn this over because we want to see our wrong sides, you see. I'm going to put our right sides together, like so. And I'm just going to do the same thing to join these squares, okay? So I'm just going to thread on my yarn. Again, I'm going to find that second chain, look for the V that's pointing left, and I know that's my front loop. That's my front loop there. Okay, leave a little bit of a tail for sewing, and then I need to find the corresponding stitch on the back, and it's pointing, the V shape's pointing right, so I know that is my back loop. I'm just going to, whoops, bring that back down. I'm just going to reinforce that. Making sure not to catch any extra bits of yarn. And I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going all the way across. So front loop for the front square, back loop for the back square. Front loop, back loop. Okay, so just coming up to the last stitch. This is this chain on the end. So front loop, find the corresponding one on the back. There it is. So that's the last stitch for that row there. And again, you can see it's got the nice ridge on the front. Then what I'm going to do is just to make sure you don't get any holes in the gap here, I'm just going to sew, because it's ended up this side, I'm just literally going to come over to this side and I'm just going to sew through. It doesn't really matter where, just right down here. And what that does is that's just going to pull your projects together, and it's going to close up any holes you're going to get in the middle, in that corner. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my next square, so it's a bit blurry, I need to bring it up, and again right sides together, so wrong side's facing you, okay, back's facing you, and do the same thing again. There's my first stitch, so arrow V shape pointing left, so I know that's my front loop. Corresponding chain this side, V shape going right, so I know that's my back loop, front loop for front square, back loop for back square, and then I'm going to just sew that through, and I'm going to do the same thing again for this edge. Okay, just carrying on, making sure my tails don't get in the way. Okay, front loop, back loop, front loop, back loop. Oops. And I'm just going to show you the mistake I've made. Make sure you start in the right square on the back square, otherwise you're going to end up with something like this. So I'm going to have to unpick this and do that edge again. Okay, just go up to the last stitch. Done it right this time. Back loop, and there we go. Okay, so when I open that up and turn it over, you can see we've got a nice ridge going across there as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to join the very last length here and just show you what I do, just to make sure you don't end up with any holes in the middle. Okay, so it's going to refocus my camera, and again I'm going to measure a piece of yarn that is that length. Sorry, it's blurry, I need to refocus. Double the length I want to sew, plus a little bit more. Okay, yeah, I could do with an autofocus on my little camera. So again, I'm going to turn it over, so I'm working on the wrong sides, and so the right sides together still. This is the last part to be closed, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sew from this square, this one here, roughly where that tail end is coming out. Just going to sew through there somewhere and over to the other side somewhere. It doesn't really matter where, you just want to make sure that you're closing up any holes. Leave a bit of a tail. I'm going to just reinforce that by doing it again. Okay. Tail end out the way. So that makes sure that there's no gaps. Then we find our first stitch, which is there, the front loop, and the same thing again. Corresponding one for this side is going to be there. Okay. Do the same thing again. Just going to reinforce that as well. Twice. Okay, and just do the same thing again along this edge. Front loop and back loop. And the last stitch. Sure they're all lined up. So then when we open this out, you can see we've got all the ridges, and hopefully you haven't got too much of a hole there. But if you do see a little bit of a hole, you can just use your tail ends just to help sew that closed. So let's thread this tail end on. Okay, and find out where that little hole is. There it is. and just going to sew over. Okay. Turn that over and you should see any hole has closed. And there we go. That is what I have been doing to create this smoother finish, but still allowing you to see the edge of the squares. Okay. So I hope you found that tutorial useful, and you can just carry on sewing all your squares together this way, whether you're making a bag like I am, or a blanket or cushion cover, whatever you fancy. But I will see you soon for some more crochet fun. Thanks for watching, guys. Bye. So what I'm doing with this is I'm actually creating 18 of these squares, and that's going to be the back, that's going to be a flap, and then I'm getting another 6 squares here. I need to join those together. That's going to be the front. So this will be the flap that comes over the bag, like so. And then I'm going to create a strap which goes all the way down the side, along the bottom. It's going to be about that thick, up the side, and it will carry on and become the handle as well. And there you have a beautiful granny square bag. But I will put that tutorial on my blog, so look out for that. See you soon. Bye.